Welcome to Fashion, Really? The podcast for people who love fashion but hate what it does to life on our planet, and who like a little bit of gossip on what's been going on in fashion and culture lately, and how it's impacting people, animals, and the planet. I'm Joshua. This is Emma. Emma, how are you?
Hello. I'm very well. I am wearing a jacket today just for show. It will come off soon after show and tell is finished because I'm very excited about it, and I'll tell you about it in a second. But this week it's been absurdly hot here in Australia, not normal Australian heat, climate crisis heat. So that's not very fun, even though I do love a bit of heat. How are you, Joshua Catcher?
I'm doing well. I'm also wearing a jacket, but I'm underdressed because it's really cold and I probably should have worn a thicker winter coat, but instead I just put on many, many layers. I love layering. Do you like layering?
I do love layering. I don't get to do it that often. I will when I go overseas, which I'll speak about later, not today. But no, layering doesn't get to happen to me very often. Well, tell me about your layers. What are you wearing?
So today, I've got a lot of vintage that's a bit older. So I'm wearing a plaid cotton shirt that I think is from the 1940s, and the cotton has just gotten so soft that if I'm not too careful, it tears, and I've had to sew it up a few times myself. On the underside, the sewing looks very sloppy, but on the outside, you can't really tell. So the pants that I'm wearing are cotton canvas twill pants, I think from like the early 1900s. They're a dark green. I'm not sure if they were like riding pants or military pants. They've got some really interesting button details on the bottom, and they're just falling apart. So I've had to put patches, and I sewed some Brave Gentleman excess textile, recycled cotton denim patches on both of the knees, which gave it some really cool character. I'm wearing 2 layers of jackets that I found at thrift stores, like a denim sweater jacket and then a khaki canvas. And then my footwear is now archive Brave Gentleman, because listeners, since the last time we spoke, I have closed my business after 15 years. Brave Gentleman is no more. What are you wearing, Emma?
Firstly, end of an era. I love my Brave Gentleman pieces. I'm pretending I am a gentleman. I am in some ways. Love what you're wearing. I also love like that level of vintage, old style vintage. I think that's cool. And I also feel like you see so often on Depop or other resale sites, people saying something is vintage when it's like 2 years old. And that's pre-loved, and we love pre-loved. But it's not quite vintage, I think. So I like that. Speaking of Depop, the top that I'm wearing, I'll start with, I got on Depop because it's an Australian brand that is actually ethical, but I only buy 5 newly made garments each year. So I wanted it, but I didn't want that to be one of my 5. And it was sold for like 90% of the original price because the color has faded and it's more of a slate gray now instead of a black. But I love slate gray. And I also know how to wash my clothes in a way that will mean the color is not going to keep on going, because I love a cold wash. Cold wash recommendation to all. But most importantly, the jacket. Let's talk about my jacket for a very long time. It is made from Sheringa bio leather.
What is Sheringa bio leather?
Sheringa bio leather is a bio leather that comes from the Peruvian Amazon. If you listened to, I think, the very first episode of the podcast, I mentioned that I was going there and produced and directed a film called Sheringa, Fashion Regenerating Amazonia, that is now out on Border Bear. Very exciting.
Congratulations.
And it follows the Awahun people. Thank you so much. as they make this. It's a very light carving, a few millimeters into the trunk of the tree. The sap comes out, they let the tree rest. Generations of people have worked for the same trees, so it doesn't cause harm to them. And producing a bioleather from that helps them to defend against deforestation for cattle ranching and for mining in fashion supply chains, thanks animal-derived leather. And it's a beautiful material. This jacket, you can see in the film, a designer from Peru, Mazda Matin, made it. And you can also see Rosalia, one of the Awahun women, wearing it at the end in the forest where it's come from. So it's very, very special to me. I hope people have a watch. And I've paired it with a lot of silver things. I have silver French-tipped nails that my friend did for me, like chrome silver. Love them.
Fancy.
Lots of silver rings. And a simple black tencel skirt and some recycled silver earrings that are like kind of molten blob looking, but like flat discs. It's very hard to explain, but if you're on YouTube, you can see them, and I think that they're nice. And I've also done a lip that is complementary to the jacket. The jacket is dyed with like a type of fruit berry that is in the Amazon. So it's like a orangey red color.
The jacket in and of itself could be an entire episode. Like we could dedicate an entire episode to talking about that jacket because I mean, the storytelling behind that is just phenomenal. And the fact that you got to go spend time there and document it. And now you have this piece that is, I think in fashion, we so often are talking about a fantasy that a garment is marketed as or advertised as. And to have an authentic story about where this jacket came from, who made it, how it was made, the impacts of the making, these are all, this is how I wish all fashion was. I wish all fashion storytelling was about not just how it looked, but how it was made. And I'm just really excited that you have that, and I love the film. And if everybody out there watches the film, we'd love to hear what you think about it. So please leave a comment.
And I think exactly, it makes it so much more beautiful and meaningful. And not just to me, but I get quite a lot of compliments on it because it's a quite bold color and it's quite interesting. But as soon as I tell them where it's come from, the interest level just goes so much higher than it was from a purely aesthetic perspective. So love that.
I have a question. So with the trees that are being utilized for the sap, is this a way to protect biodiversity and protect the trees from being cut and cleared?
Yes. So Caxicori Studio, that is the Peruvian material innovator that works in a conservation agreement with the indigenous peoples, they only work with wild-grown Sharinga trees. So they're not farming them. And those trees are there as part of old-growth forests that otherwise are at risk because the Peruvian government is more likely to create reserve areas for the indigenous people to live in more safety and security against deforestation if they can show that they are able to support themselves by looking after the land rather than taking from it, which is unfortunate that we're in the kind of system where it has to be shown that way anyway. Like indigenous people should just have the right to their land.
Yes.
But given that's how it is, it helps to support what those people want to do, maintaining their connection to the land and to their culture. And a good example is that in the reserve area that these people have been able to secure for themselves because of this, when you go over the border, the community there has had a home lit on fire as a kind of threat against a company that is trying to deforest their land for mining, I believe. So that just really shows how crucial this thing is. And so the more brands that invest in this kind of material and that use it, the more communities can protect themselves and their land in the same way.
This is a rare situation where scaling results in greater biodiversity protection, and scaling results in greater forest protection and greater indigenous land rights protection. So yeah, this is exciting. We want to see stuff like this scaled, and what a great garment. I want one.
We'll have to sort that out for you, Joshua. Let's talk about the news.
Yes.
Tell me something first about the news. What do you want to tell me?
something really devastating happened. Um,
Mm,
have you heard about the Kantomanto market fire? So this
yes,
is
terrible.
yeah. So this was a secondhand clothing market. It's West Africa's largest secondhand clothing market, and it suffered a devastating fire. It destroyed 2/3 of the market. It is endangering about 10,000 people's livelihoods. And major fashion brands are largely ignoring this while pouring support into fires that are more in their face, like the Los Angeles garment district fire. But not to say that they shouldn't be
Mm,
supporting that. But this fire in West Africa, it exposes the industry's double standard, and about $5 million are going to be needed to rebuild Contamanto, which is a fraction of what brands spend on marketing, for example. Um,
mm,
so, what people might not know is that a market like this is critical because it processes most of the fashion industry's fast fashion waste. It's an industry that is
mm,
doing a service that is so valuable, and they've managed to make it profitable and creative and exciting. And now that they have been devastated by this fire, where are those brands that are being provided that service of dealing with their excess and their waste?
mm. I think it's so true to highlight that the people of Ghana, because that's where the market is, have been forced to deal with a problem that is not their own. It's mostly like Western brands, European, American brands that are dumping their clothes there. People who, you know, don't want to look after their clothes, haven't repaired them, haven't tried to give them a second life. They go there, and they're able to, turn a lot of them into new garments, to recycle them, upcycle them, but there's just way too much to ever be dealt with, and they're forced to deal with that problem. And now that they can't because of this fire, those brands that have been outsourcing a huge cost of dealing with that end of life are just nowhere to be seen. So I think that's really disappointing.
Yeah. So, the Orr Foundation estimates that about $5 million are going to be needed to rebuild Contamanto. And meanwhile, a brand like Nike, for example, spends $1.1 billion on something called demand creation. That was from quarter 2 of 2024. So that just puts things in perspective how much a single brand spends on an abstract kind of demand creation versus what is needed to
Mm,
rebuild this market. And it's a fraction. Any big brand could at this moment make a decision to rebuild this market and provide those funds, and it would be pocket change for some of them. So where are they? Why aren't they doing it?
mm. And speaking of brands that have a lot of waste stream that needs to be dealt with, my news piece is about Shein. They have been called into a UK parliamentary inquiry called Making Work Pay about an employment rights bill. Shein and also Temu and a bunch of other brands were called to speak and give evidence to this Parliament committee, and they will ask questions specifically about labour abuses and modern slavery issues in their supply chain. Basically, the UK
Mm,
Parliament is interested in if